everyone, I'm Rosa. I'm part of the Fertility Network team. We're delighted to have Charlotte from MRKH today with us today, in fact. MRKH are a charity who bring together ladies who have MRKH, and they do a fantastic job for their community. If you haven't heard of them before, follow them on their social networks because they're just giving their website a bit of a fresh new look, so they'll let you know when it's ready. We invited Charlotte to chat to us about her story and the options for starting or growing a family. So Charlotte's going to take us through a presentation for us, and then we'll have some time for some questions at the end. So if you've got a question, just drop them into the Q&A box and we'll do our best to get through them. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for joining us. I'm going to hand over to you now if you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Rosa. Let me just share my screen. Oh, hang on a second. 2 seconds. Let me just share the right screen. Okay. Go. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Hi everyone. Thank you very much to Rosa and the Fertility Network team for having me. My name is Charlotte. Many of at least the MRKH community will know me as Charlie. Either is fine. I am the director of MRKH Connect, and I just want to go through a few slides and then hopefully have a good discussion with you all about, excuse me, about MRKH, what it is, a little bit about that, a little bit about me, what I do, what MRKH Connect does, and what options and routes there are to having a family if you have MRKH. And of course then it ties very nicely into support availability, and a little plug at the end for a really fantastic event that's coming up this weekend, bringing the MRKH community together. So first off, I just want to do a very quick single slide introduction to what MRKH is. It's the only bit of biology I'm going to show in this presentation. So for those of you that don't know, MRKH it stands for Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome. So the initials here are initials of the professionals that discovered MRKH as a condition. And what that leads to in terms of development is a lack of development of the uterus, shortened vaginal tract, and an absent cervix. In most cases, that's in general what will happen. And there are two types of MRKH. So type 1 would have, just as described in the picture on the left-hand side. But type 2 may also have other related conditions associated with the kidneys, possibly some effects on bone skeletal issues as well, and in a very small number of cases that can also affect your hearing. So there are lots of different components, lots of research is being done in genetics in terms of understanding more about what causes and leads to MRKH. However, from a developmental point of view, we are females, we are born female, and we have XX chromosomes, and our normal puberty development is the same as it would normally be. When it is normally diagnosed is during the time we would normally start our period, so 15, 16, 17 for many people. And of course, at that point, the periods don't start because there isn't a uterus. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on what that kind of means when I talk a bit about my story, just to give a bit of context rather than it all seeming a little bit medical. But just to note, the ovaries that we have, they control our hormones, they control our normal female development. So everything else physiologically looks the same. It doesn't look any different. And that's why often we wouldn't know until the point we reach that time in puberty where we would normally start our periods, that there is ever anything wrong, unless perhaps we have some of the less common related conditions to kidneys and skeletal issues that may then lead to us having that diagnosed a little bit sooner. So that's it in terms of looking at the biology of MRKH, but I'm happy to answer some more questions as we go through. So if you have those, as Rosa says, do pop them into the Q&A and we can look at those at the end. So MRKH and me, I just wanted to spend a few slides talking a bit about about me and my experiences as a way to also, I guess, provide some context and experience to what living with MRKH can actually be like, and what processes you go through in terms of treatment and experience and support and those types of things. So this is a very fresh-faced picture of me as a 17-year-old, newly diagnosed. I'm now 36. I'm from the south of England, but I now live in the very north of Norway. So the picture on the right-hand side is actually a winter daytime picture in the place that I live. So I live right in the very top. I get to see the northern lights on a very regular basis. So it's a very different lifestyle. I moved there for my day job, which is different to my charity work with MRKH Connect. And my day job takes me into a very different field completely. I work in the space sector. So I actually analyze satellite data as my day job. So I moved to Norway to do that. And I'm there, I've been there now for 2 years, currently in the UK because of the COVID situation. So it's very, very strange times and very exciting to be at a very kind of digital kind of turning point, I think, in the community as a whole, and how we share information, which has shown quite a lot of growth in terms of what we share and how we share it, which is fantastic, I think, for the community. So I was diagnosed when I was 17. As I discussed on the first slide, that was because I didn't start my periods. So I went to see the GP. I actually went to see the GP when I was 16, and they told me to wait a year and see if it started naturally. They didn't. So I was referred to a gynecologist where they ran a series of tests. They put me on the pill. They did lots of different scans to try and ascertain what was causing the fact that I hadn't started my periods. In the end, that culminated in a laparoscopy, which is a little camera on a kind of endoscope that goes in and has a little look around. And that's where they found that I didn't have a uterus. Now, in most cases, certainly in the UK, I think is more common that the diagnosis would come via an MRI or a pelvic ultrasound. So it's not quite as, I guess, internal as it used to be. Which obviously means recovery time is well, there isn't the necessity for a recovery time like there is with a general anaesthetic. So I think that's also helped as things have moved forward. So it was a bit of a shock. I remember sitting in the hospital at the time with my mum and being told that this is what I had, not really understanding what that really meant. To be honest, it was a bit of a yeah, it was a very strange time. It's a very surreal moment, I think, to look back on now, to try and even put into perspective as to how I felt. But I was very lucky that my gynecologist had actually seen a case of MRKH before. I should also note that MRKH affects 1 in 5,000 women. So whilst it's not considered rare, it's not all that common either. And it just so happened that my gynecologist had seen a case only a few months before mine. And there is a national centre in London, which is the Queen Charlotte's and Chelsea Hospital in Hammersmith area. And I was referred there quite quickly. I know and I understand from speaking with many others in the community that their routes to finding support, and both medically and professionally, can take a lot longer. So I do count myself very lucky for that. But what I found being referred to Queen Charlotte's was they have a wealth of resources, knowledge. They also have counsellors. They have support groups as well, and that for me was really fantastic at that time. I mean, we're talking nearly 20 years ago. It was a very different world to what we have now in terms of information availability, social media interaction, and it can feel isolating at the best of times to be diagnosed with something that, you know, as a teenager, you then suddenly feel, you know, am I a woman? Am I a freak? Am I normal? And trying to work out how to kind of manage all that feeling whilst you're kind of going through your formative years, I think is really challenging, because you're really never prepared for what's kind of to come. I mean, it's all of those thoughts about having a family, and growing up thinking with dolls, and thinking that you probably will have a family at some stage is almost like a given, and that choice was seemingly being taken away, as well as the fact that one of the effects of MRKH is that it causes a shortened vaginal tract, and what that means is that it can be very uncomfortable, if not impossible, to have a comfortable sex life. So one thing that one of the kind of processes that you can go through is to lengthen your vagina, and that can be through different methods. Most commonly, at least in the UK, that's through a process called dilation, and that's a process of kind of gently stretching the vaginal tract until it's a little bit like a rubber band almost, that you're kind of stretching it to a point that you can then have a very comfortable and fulfilling sex life. It's not obviously all about sex. It's not all about treatment. You do not have to do that at all. It's totally your choice. And there are other methods available. And if anyone's interested in understanding more about the treatment side, then pop a question in the Q&A, or send us a message afterwards, and we can signpost you in the right direction, or suggest some medical contacts for you to discuss further in more detail what might be most suitable for you. So as I went forward, I guess I went through my 20s, and I had a long-term boyfriend at the time, and we were trying to work out what we might do in the future, and we started exploring different routes. We went down the route of IVF surrogacy and started that process. In the end, unfortunately, we decided not to take that any further, and I'll come back to the different routes to having children, should you wish to, a little bit later, and go into more detail. But that whole process kind of changed things for me, to be honest. It gave me a new insight into really how I was trying to manage, often poorly, I think, in my 20s, my feelings and what I thought MRKH really meant to me, and it kind of came down to a process of really learning to be able to grieve for what had happened. It is a grief, it's a trauma, and whilst externally nothing looks different, the psychological impact of learning that you have a condition like MRKH, as with lots of other conditions, is something that should not be dampened down and hidden away. There's a lot to understand and make sure you have clear for yourself, so that you can kind of work to a path to acceptance. And it was really a turning point. A friend of mine who I met through the support groups kind of contacted me and said she wanted to do this crazy challenge, and she wanted to raise some awareness for MRKH, and how could we do it? And we decided to do a blog to document our training, make it public. We went out there completely. It was the first time that we'd really been so open about it to a wider audience. Both of us had been quite open within our kind of groups of friends and family, but it's a very different thing to then put that publicly on Facebook or other social media for anyone to see, and for not just your work colleagues who perhaps you hadn't told, but possibly anyone else who may come across that, depending on how public your profile is. So it was a big moment for us, but something we felt was necessary, and something that we both believed is exactly where we needed to be in terms of our own development and acceptance. And I have to say, I have not looked back since then. It has been such a fantastic opportunity for me to share my stories, and I found it useful for me on a personal level, and I've then been really delighted to hear such amazing feedback and stories from people who have found something to relate to, whether they have MRKH or not, in some of the things I've said. And so I still continue this blog. This is a picture of the front page of my blog site, so do take a look if you're interested. There's lots of different content on there. It's not all about MRKH. I do blog about other things too, but most of them is about my life with MRKH, what that means for me, and also as a resource for me, as I tried to, particularly, and as I started the blog, trying to unjumble my head a little bit, but also then trying to make sure that those people coming through know that there are resources available, and my blog is one of many in the community of MRKH, as well as, of course, there are other. Fertility Network have a series of blogs, as do lots of other resources out there. So there is now a lot of information to call upon, and know that you're not alone in these experiences. So I guess from this blog, and I mentioned this challenge that Jen had kind of brought to me, and this kind of seems a little bit like an ego wall, but it wasn't intended to be. It was more just the whole kind of concept of challenges for me was part of the acceptance process, part of me feeling really proud of myself, that I could do something different. I could, this was totally outside of my comfort zone. I was not a runner. I didn't really like being outside. But suddenly I found a love in just finding something that was for me. I could switch off. I could go for a run. I could do this crazy challenge where we walked to Brighton, and I did the London to Brighton 100 kilometers challenge. And then the following year I decided to do it again, and we raised money for MRKH Connect. I did a 130-mile cycle ride. I do half marathons, and for me that was my thing. I wanted to give back to the community that I felt had really helped me, and by doing that I was raising awareness for a charity that I believed in, which was MRKH Connect. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a minute. But I was doing something for myself as well. I was setting myself goals. I realized exercise, crazy challenges probably isn't for everyone. So you've got to find your thing. But for me, this was it. It's finding something that was different, that was a release that I could really get my teeth into and focus on. And my poor boyfriend now follows me around the country as I do these crazy challenges on a relatively regular basis, although not quite so much at the moment, as my ones for this year have been postponed. So as we move forward, MRKH Connect, who are we? So MRKH Connect was founded in 2014 by Kelly and Janet. Kelly is British, Janet is American. They met online in a Facebook group for MRKH, and it inspired them through chatting and finding a connection with each other to set up a site that could bring people closer together. That was essentially the premise behind MRKH Connect from the start, is connecting people together, bringing them together in a safe and secure way, allowing them to talk and share their experiences, and raise awareness for MRKH at the same time. So that's where the kind of idea for MRKH came from. MRKH Connect, sorry, came from. And obviously I was privileged enough to raise some money for them for a few years, and then I was invited to join them as a member of their trustee board. And last year they decided to take a step back, and asked if I would take over as director of the charity. So this was another turning point for me, I guess. It was a very exciting opportunity for me to be involved in something that, not just raising money and raising awareness in the advocacy that I was doing, but also being able to potentially bring elements of the community together and be part of that in a much bigger way, which I had always hoped to be, but hadn't really imagined exactly what that would look like. So I was delighted to take over last year, and since then we've been working extremely hard to, we have a new trustee board. We had, as Rosa mentioned, we're in the middle of a big relaunch and rebrand. So currently our website is down, but you'll see, I'll talk a little bit about what we have available, what we will have available, and just watch this space over the next couple of weeks when we go live. I hope you'll like what we've done with MRKH Connect. And our aims really do remain the same. We build on the great foundation that Kelly and Janet set up, and it's all about connection. It's bringing people together. It's providing support, information and resources for people with MRKH, but also for their families, for the public. So we have different phases to our website. We have a secure member area for women with MRKH to chat together. And then we have a public facing area with a wealth of resources that are publicly available. And of course, the ultimate aim of this is to raise awareness. So some of the ways that we do this are bringing the community together and bringing the advocacy together across the world. So MRKH Connect is a charity in the UK, registered in the UK. However, we have because of the nature of what we're doing as a connection, we have a really global reach as well. So as a community, we work together with other collaborative groups, and I'll talk about an initiative that's happening this weekend that we're also involved in, but also bringing the smaller groups together. There are a number of initiatives in the UK. Mind Over MRKH is a good example of that. It's a relatively new group, but they're doing lots of creative resources, which sits really nicely with what we're doing at MRKH Connect in terms of the community, and then allowing that to, building on that with some of these other initiatives. And I think as we go forward with what we have planned available on the site, I think it will be, really exciting. So this is, I guess, this is really the basis of the site. This is not exactly as it will look, but just to kind of give you an idea. So one of the things that MRKH Connect has always been known for is its map. It's searchable map. You can look all over the world and see where there are other people with MRKH. And then you can connect with them, and you can chat with them, and you can do this privately, securely in our member area. It's obviously free to sign up. This is a charity community initiative, but you can be part of that community, and we look forward to sharing more details on how you register to do that when the site is live. And you can share your location. You can be, it doesn't have to be exactly where you are. You can be put yourself wherever you want to in the world, if that's easier for you. You can have a pseudonym. We try to make this as easy as possible, make you feel as comfortable as possible to know that there are people out there to talk to, and you can connect, you can chat. There will be a forum. There will be a wealth of resources. Some of them will be public resources, and that includes some audio bites we did recently. You'll hear a clip of in a sec. And also blogs, public blogs, as well as those who wish to can also place blogs within the secure area as well. So there'll be lots of different resources here, lots of ways to interact with MRKH Connect and the initiatives and events that we're doing. And of course, some of those will be with larger groups. Hopefully we'll be doing more with Fertility Network and other groups as we move forward as well. So trying to bring as much information to the community and signposting the community to the different areas that may be of use to them. So different parts of your journey, you may be interested in different things. So when the site goes live, if there are things missing, then just let us know. We'd love to hear what more information you'd like to see. So this is a super sneak peek of what the front page of the new website currently looks like, which currently you can't see because it's behind a web form splash screen. But we are under construction. We'll be about 2 weeks off, I think, going live now. We just need to do some finishing touches, and then we're really excited to be able to share this with you all. So do follow us on social media. We are at MRKH Connect. I put it on the screen across social media platforms. So that's the same on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And you can still send us a message if you go to mrkhconnect.org. There's a web form and you can send us an email. And likewise, there's an email at the end of this, and you can contact us directly as well. So lots of ways to interact with us, and just bear with us for a little longer whilst we hopefully bring you a much bigger and better MRKH Connect. So I guess the second part of the presentation is a little bit more about family, starting a family, having a family, what family really means. Of course, it's not just about having children. But of course, that is often the first thought that we have when we're diagnosed with MRKH Connect, or first thought that many people have. You know, I'm never going to be able to have children. And this is a quote from someone, well, what someone has said to us. In fact, you're going to hear that quote just now in this clip. So I'm just going to play this. This is from our Let's Connect series. So we ran a series of audio bites over the last 10 weeks. Each week was a different part or a stage of MRKH's journey. They're 2 to 4 minutes long normally, different experiences from women in different locations, sharing their experiences, their voices, really quite powerful. So I'm just going to play this, and like, yeah, hopefully some will, I'm sure, recognize it, but for others, I hope it provides a resource to understand a little bit more about what this can mean for us when we're diagnosed with MRKH, and how it makes us feel about having a family going forward.
Go through an education that includes everything our bodies should naturally do. That will start our periods, and that sex means we get pregnant if we don't use protection. That's all we are prepared for. We aren't taught that this might never happen. From always imagining being pregnant one day after experiencing my mum go through the excitement of having my brother, and from a young age admiring what a woman's body goes through to give life. So when I found out that I couldn't and would never be able to do that, I was devastated.
I think every girl just expects that one day they can have children, and they just assume that this will happen even if they aren't really wanting children yet, or if they've never really felt maternal before.
The first thing that I really thought when I got diagnosed was, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to be a mum, am I? And that was really, really difficult for me to cope with. Even though there's all these options and you know that, but in your head I don't think you can shake the feeling that you're not going to be a mum.
It was heartbreaking knowing I'd never be able to carry my own child. I'd always dreamt of having my own children, and receiving the diagnosis made it seem extremely difficult. For me, this is probably the hardest part of this diagnosis to come to terms with.
I was raised as an only child, and I had a terrible childhood. I have only ever wanted to grow up and have a family, give my kids something that I did not have. So I dealt with so much anger, grief, bitterness, and being critical of other mothers after my diagnosis.
Years later, after much needed counselling, I realised that what I had gone through was grief.
Yeah, I experienced sadness, but my infertility grief actually came in my 30s. I knew it would be a difficult couple of years, but I didn't realise it would be a difficult decade.
It felt like a bit of a black hole, like the possibility now of having kids was so minute that I wasn't whole.
I received my diagnosis of MRKH back in 1983. It broke my heart to realise I would never be able to have children. I was told that it would never happen in my lifetime, that they would ever be able to do uterus transplants, and that to look to adopting or fostering children. When my sister fell pregnant, I used to get drunk and go down to her house, and I used to call her names. I got really upset and I hit a really black patch.
I always think MRKH is a really interesting diagnosis in the fact that it seems to interrupt our formative years of when we're really thinking about parenthood and partnership.
My body's lack of ability to carry out what I perceived as female duties had failed me. I think this hit me the most. I was just a child and I was grieving my unborn child. It's unnatural to think so much about pregnancy at that age, and for years it's been all I ever wanted.
I definitely still want children, but I'm just learning to accept that my journey to motherhood might be a little bit different to other people's sort of conventional journeys.
I'm very maternal in my nature, and since I was about 15, I knew I wanted to have children of my own one day. I had an idea in my mind of how that would look and how it might be. So to be told at the age of 18 by medical professionals that I could never have children, that was an absolute shock, and it shattered my whole world.
Now I had to learn to let these feelings go if I wanted to experience true happiness.
I don't think it has changed my thoughts on having children. I've always wanted to be a mum, but grieving for the children that I may never have and the belly that will never grow is a constant and continuous process. It never goes away, and it's a pain that I have to feel every day without fail. And having people around me who don't understand that only heightens the isolation that I'm sure we've all felt at some point.
And you just know it's going to be harder than most of the couples have to face. But it did make me realise how much I wanted children, because no matter how much I'm going to have to go through, I'm still willing to do it.
Now I know that there are alternate ways to motherhood. I wish I'd been told that at the age of 18, that there are different ways apart from the traditional method of being a mother.
My thoughts never changed about having children. I always wanted children. I played with dolls and prams as a child, and yes, after my diagnosis, my whole world shattered. But I know now that I should never have spent half my life saying I can't have children, because you can.
We go through an education that includes every...
So some sobering voices there, but these are real women sharing their experiences, and I think it's really powerful to hear those, and please do, if you're interested, hear the rest of the series, because and we will expand on this as we move to the new website, because a lot of the topics here are obviously echoed by lots of people. These are women who are from very different experiences, different cultural backgrounds, different geographic locations, and yet all have, you know, quite similar experiences in part to really kind of, and this is where sharing experiences and support becomes really important. So just to kind of touch on some of the things that they mention in the soundbite just there, there are a number of different routes to having children should you wish to do so. And Fertility Network has lots of different resources on this as well, and we will do some signposting from our side, but of course groups like Fertility Network, who have a wealth of this information, are a good point of contact as well. So I would say the most common route for women with MRKH to have children, if they go down that route, is through IVF surrogacy or through adoption. So IVF surrogacy is, in case you're not aware, is a process where in many cases, at least with MRKH, the eggs from the MRKH woman and the sperm from their partner can be put into a surrogate, and a surrogate can carry the child to term. And actually, whilst we are considered infertile because we can't carry our own children, our fertility is normally quite good. But of course, we are just unable to carry the child ourselves. But our ovaries and the functionality is often quite good, and perhaps even stronger than some others who have to go through IVF treatment for other reasons. So that is a route to go down. And likewise, adoption, of course, is a fantastic way to have children, adoption and fostering. And there are many different agencies across the UK, across the world, who can provide more information on how to go down that route. I would say in both cases, and probably all cases, as the voices allude to as well, the process is a bit different to how we might have imagined it would have been as a child thinking about having a family. I'm not sure there is any normal route to a family, regardless of MRKH. So it's fraught with often other things that come in. It's not often the easy process that I think we learn it's likely to be as children. So there are often many more complications, and I found from blogging that there are many people that have spoken to me that have shared their stories and challenges that I would otherwise not have known about had they not reached out to me. So it is a long process. It can be very stressful, extremely emotional in both of these cases, and that for me at least was why that process didn't work out. It caused a lot of tension, and in the end it wasn't worth continuing at that point. But I'm very happy with that decision, and I know that everyone who has gone through this process, despite how hard and how difficult it is, they have always been extremely grateful, and would not have changed that situation for the world to have what they have at the end. It would be remiss of me at this point not to also mention womb transplants. It was mentioned in the soundbite. It is also mentioned in some other soundbites. I haven't put a slide on this on purpose, and the reason for that is that womb transplants is still very much in the testing phase. They're still running clinical trials. There is a lot of media around this. It's extremely exciting that science can be as developed as it is with uterine transplants, and that this is possible. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. But it's not a kind of standard procedure that's available. So if you'd like some more information, do get in touch, and I can signpost you accordingly. And then, of course, on that note, future family doesn't always necessarily mean children. For me, it doesn't mean children. For me, it means a supportive partner. It means many children in our lives, nieces, nephews, godchildren, and that we're perfectly happy and accepting of that. And of course, so those are also resources that are important. There are people that have always wanted to have children with MRKH, but have not been able to go down that route for whatever reason. And also those who are very happy to be childless, and therefore resources available for everyone as well. Is something that we want to promote on our new site, and make sure that it's not just all about having children, but of course we know for most of the people this is an important topic, and family is a very important consideration, whatever kind of stage you're at. That decision whether to move forward or not is one that is considered. So there are lots of resources on our website and Fertility Network's website, and hopefully if you have some questions we can discuss that more. So I guess my last kind of couple of points here is really the importance of support. It's the importance of recognizing that you need support. It's the importance of knowing where to find that support, and then making sure that support that you're accessing is beneficial for you, and checking in with yourself. It's very easy, I think, particularly in this more digital age, for us to be very kind of open and advocate for MRKH, and it's difficult because it's not very easy to necessarily recognize it straight away, but also be able to recognize that sometimes it's okay to take a step back. We don't have to be out there all the time. We don't have to share our story at all. It's not all about advocacy. It's about us being comfortable in our own skin and being able to accept who we are and what that means for us. And if we want to then, of course, be public about it, then there is a very large and vocal community who are always supportive of sharing and promoting. And then there are many others who are very happy just to have, I guess, their acceptance in, I won't say silence, that's not the wrong word, but for themselves. And that's, of course, totally understandable. And at the end of the day is exactly what you need, and that's the main thing. So I guess my final point is really that you're not alone. There is a community there. We are very happy to support and answer questions, signpost accordingly. So do please reach out and speak to us. It is a very isolating condition. We speak to women from all ages, from as young as 13, 14, up to those who have just found out they have a name for the condition in their 60s. So it really is, it's a community. It brings people together. Everyone's welcome. So do just reach out to us and ask any questions you have, or if you need to know some more information. And just as a very final slide before we move to questions, I just wanted to promote this event that's happening at the weekend. So this is an event called Global Goes Digital. This is a global MRKH event. Global MRKH is an organization that brings together other MRKH organizations, as well as advocates, as well as medical professionals, with the hope to improve the standard of care for MRKH and bring the community together. It's very supportive of a number of different initiatives. It's relatively new, but it's building in its I guess in what it's doing, and this is one of those things it's doing. This is the first virtual event that they're running, inspired by Dr. Susan Carroll, who is studying she is a psychology doctor, and this is part of some work that she's been doing on the mental health effects of MRKH. So as you'll see here, we have some different panel sessions. We talk about diagnosis, psychological, social support. Registration for this event is still open until Thursday evening. It is on Saturday night, 7:45 p.m. UK time. And MRKH Connect has been really privileged to be part of this group. We've supported a number of the promotional activities and we'll be there on the night supporting as well. And so, and just to give you a very final look, this is just a snapshot of some of the 21 speakers that they have presenting from all over the world. That includes the US, Australia, Korea, Kenya. I'm trying to see who else we've got here. So all, Europe, everywhere. So it's going to be really a fantastic event. I understand there's over 200 people already registered. It's free. So do join us for a couple of hours and just learn a little bit more about MRKH and you know, the different aspects of it, whether you're there because you have MRKH, whether someone else has MRKH that you're trying to support, or whether you just want to understand more about this condition. Do join us. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charlie. I'm going to call you Charlie now. Thank you so much. That was great, and it was just so emotive, the audio stuff as well, coming from obviously Fertility Network and having been through a really difficult TTC journey myself. It just, you know, I connect immediately with all of those feelings, and it just goes to show how powerful it is when you do connect people together, because they don't feel like they're on their own anymore. Like, I know you and I bounced lots of conversation around when we first met, and it just makes you feel like you're not the only one struggling, you're not the only one suffering. So we've had just a couple of questions come in, so if anyone else has got any more, then do feel free to drop them in the chat. Let's start with this lovely question. Will MRKH be added to giving, Just Giving or GoFundMe as a charity?
Yes, it actually is being added at the moment. We're just waiting for it to, hopefully the last couple of days. It will be on Virgin Money Giving. We also have PayPal as well, so both of those will be available on our site. We may well add Just Giving going forward, but we felt Virgin Money Giving was a better route for us at this stage.
Brilliant, brilliant. And then the other question is, oh, and we've got another one coming in. This one is, what's the adoption process like? What factors might hinder the process? Mental health or age, for example? I don't know how much you know about the adoption process.
I'm not sure I can help exactly, but I guess from an introductory point of view, I know, I mean, the process certainly for adoption, it would not be any different for any other couple looking to adopt. I guess that's the first point to make. And then it will be a case of different adoption. I think speaking to a local adoption charity would be the first port of call, because they have all of those resources that you need. They'll be able to go through everything. There tends to be a number of forms that you have to do. They'll do a series of checks, and that will vary a little bit. So I would suggest to speak to a local charity.
They do. So I can speak from a little bit of personal experience.
Okay, fantastic.
I haven't adopted, but it was something that I looked into, and they hold really great. Most of the adoption agencies hold really great introduction evenings, and you go along and you can ask questions, and they give you the information really frankly. And what I understood from the adoption evening that I went to is that it's really very, very specific. It depends on you, and they spend so much. The reason it takes such a long time to go through the adoption process is because you are assigned somebody who basically comes and learns everything about your life and your mental health and your age, and then they are able to make a decision on whether or not you would be the right person. And typically things like, because this question came up in the evening I went to, it just depends on you. They're not going to mark points off you. They're not, you know, that they want you to be a person who is able to adopt. So they're not there to sort of be against you. They're there to just to check that it's right for you, actually, is the feeling that I got. But we do have some resources on our website, and we do also have we have recently shared a video of Anya Sizer, who's one of my colleagues, and she's adopted, and she talks a lot about the process and stuff. So
that'd be fantastic. Yeah, well, we can, and we have just to I guess add to that question, we have Fertility Network is linked from our site as well. So if you don't find answers to some questions that you might have on our site, then you can go and explore Fertility Network's wealth of information and resources and webinars that you also have.
Brilliant, thanks, Charlotte. So We've got a couple more questions that have come in. So what stage of Charlie's MRKH journey was the most challenging and how did you overcome it? Unless you are still in it and she sends her love.
Okay, I think it was probably the going through the IVF process and considering that as a route to a family. And I was with a long-term partner at the time. We felt that this was probably about 10 years ago. And it was hard because I think we were debating what to do for the best. We were debating whether we wanted to go down that route, whether we wanted to explore adoption. We decided to go with IVF surrogacy and just see what was possible. And something I didn't mention, but something that does come up as well, is that obviously there is sometimes funding available for IVF cycles, but often that's not available if you're using surrogacy. And that can take a lot of lobbying. We had some conversations recently within MRKH community about all this lobbying with MPs, and I think now I guess the message would be that go into it with the kind of foresight that you probably won't get funding, and then of course if that does happen, that's fantastic. It will certainly be a great help, and that funding will fund the medication side of the IVF. And then the surrogacy is different, and that will be expenses that you pay to a surrogate to carry the child, and travel expenses and those kind of things. And that's quite a complicated process. And I think what we probably did was we jumped into it too soon. We probably weren't really prepared for everything. I think it probably a little bit driven by, you always hear, oh, we're running out of time, you don't want to leave it too late, and of course that is true, and it does take a while to do that, but I'm just not sure we were ready at that point to take it forward as we should have been. So that was the hardest bit, to kind of come out of that process. Unfortunately that relationship then ended, and it was a really hard time for both of us, I guess, independently, to then work out what comes next. I mean, I was then, early 30s, thinking, well, I'm never going to have a family then. This is just, I was then so, I guess, fixated on the future that I stressed myself out completely about what that really meant. And it was, I have to say, for me, the counselling support from the hospital was invaluable at that time. And I've used them in various different stages of since I was diagnosed, from diagnosis and treatment and what that felt like, to my friends having children, to then trying to go through that process and what that really meant for me. And it was that kind of off the back of that I suddenly kind of had a light bulb moment, and I thought, I need to live in the moment. I need to do what's right for me, really, and kind of go through that process and grieve a bit for whether or not I would have a child, and I think it kind of got to that point as my life moved on. I moved to a different country, which I was never planning to do, and all these other things happened that it kind of changed my perspective a little bit. And I think I've been so fixated on that this is what I should do, this is the next step, that rather than thinking, well, what do I really want out of life in general. So I think that was the hardest part, and it was there was a dark period in there, but it was great to kind of come out the other side with a fresh perspective. And it was really out of that the blogging started, that the crazy challenges, and all of this kind of snowballed out of it, and I couldn't be happier that it did, because I think it's a very strange thing to say, but I know a number of women with MRKH who are comfortable and accepting of the condition actually wouldn't change the fact that they have it, which is a very strange thing to say. But I think without it, I would imagine I'd be a really different person. And I think at a young age, to have to go through all that emotion, have to deal with all of that and what that means. And my parents have even said to me, more recently, having read my blog and things, that we didn't know that this was what was going on. And I said, well, to be honest, at the time, I'm not sure I did either. But it's when you're reflecting on it that you realize that actually some of this is quite a big deal. And that, regardless of whether we feel like we're losing control at times, the fact that we're even talking about it takes a strength and takes a process out of ourselves to actually do. So I think it's there are hard times, there will be, and even today, I mean, I'm comfortable, of course, talking about it, but it's you do get bad days. It's just life, and it's just about kind of recognizing that it's okay to step back and take yourself off social media, whatever you need to do, just to have a breather, go for a walk, whatever that is. So there will be bumps in the road, but I think the light at the end of the tunnel will make it worthwhile when you get there.
Oh, thanks. That's a really lovely answer. So in the last quality assurance meeting I attended with QCCH NHS, they said they wanted to ensure that all hospitals are replicating their service. Guy's Hospital up the road seem very behind, and if girls are sent there, they are not getting the right support. What can we do collectively to bring the hospitals to work together as a team across the UK?
That is a great question, and something that has been kind of high on the priority list as well, because it is a problem. In London, I would say that there are really two hospitals that are kind of leading in MRKH, and that would be Queen Charlotte's and also UCLH. Both of them have specialist teams in MRKH, but both of them have quite different ways of managing the condition, as I understand. And my only experience is with Queen Charlotte's. But I know people that also really enjoy the support group meetings and the offerings from UCLH as well. But I know this is something that Queen Charlotte's is doing, as that comment kind of alludes to, and that's something that we want to try and help facilitate as much as possible. So one of the people on our trustee board is a psychologist from Queen Charlotte's. So we work with her as well to understand kind of what kind of works in terms of the care that that we get at Queen Charlotte's. What kind of works? What do some of these other hospitals need to emulate? And that goes for other groups as well. I know there is a group in Birmingham with some specialisms, and of course in many parts of the country, and that has grown over the years, which I think is good. But there is and you and I were talking just before the webinar went live, but I'm still astounded at how few GPs pick this up quickly, and then they don't know where to send people when it gets to that point. And I think that's something that even nearly 20 years after diagnosis, I'm a bit disheartened that still happens. And to hear some of these really horrible stories of women, both in the UK, but also in different geographic regions, who have some really tumultuous journeys to find any support. It's really heart-wrenching, to be honest. And I think that's something that we want to work on going forward. And I think that will come out of some of the work with Global MRKH, with the community as a whole. I think this is very much a kind of community-driven initiative, working with those hospitals. And I think we work closely with Queen Charlotte's, but we also have contacts at the other hospitals, and we want to expand on that. We're not tied to anyone in particular. We want to make sure that standard of care and offering is available to all. But I guess what I would say, just as an aside, is that as I understand it, from you can be referred to Queen Charlotte's even if that's not where you were originally referred to. So you can speak to your GP about doing that, and they can refer you to Queen Charlotte's. You don't have to be from London. Don't have to be from the south of England. They support a number of women from all over the UK, including Northern Ireland. So so I would get in touch with them and speak to your GP about it if you have any uncertainty about the care that you have.
That's great. Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really hope that we can help you in what you're doing. So let us know, if there's stuff we can share for you.
I would love that. That would be great.
I'm hoping that everybody has found this really helpful, and I'm sure you have. So yeah, if you don't know Charlotte's MRKH website, then do make sure you follow her on socials and everything, so that you can see once she launches. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to end us there just because we're coming up to past. But yeah, do keep an eye out on our resources as well. I'm hoping that we've got bits and pieces on the website that might answer some questions around adoption, and also surrogacy, but also around you know, if you decide that children or having a family isn't for you, we've got resources around More to Life, which is living without children. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again, Charlotte. It's been really
thank you for having me.
Presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.